If you are a pen tester, I can't imagine like a quicker way to get sued. We're going to be talking about a book that I recently read called 0 Days by Ruth Ware. The reason that I read this book is because it actually depicts two pen testers. You've probably seen hacking done in movies or maybe in books that has been really inaccurate. Like on the one spectrum, we have like CSI where someone's hacking them and they have two people typing on the keyboard at the same time. It's wild. And then we have Mr. Robot probably on the other side of that spectrum, where a lot of people revere Mr. Robot because they did a lot of consulting with the tech community. So a lot of people appreciated that, right? And then we have a lot of other things that are just kind of in the middle. And I would say that this is probably in the middle. This is no hate towards the author and not a full book review. I'm just going to be talking about some of the technical aspects of the book and how they are depicted in fiction versus how they're really are in real life. Now, I don't really read thriller books. This is a thriller book. This is my first book that I've read by this author. The main character is called Jack Cross and her husband Gabe, and they are described as the best penetration specialists in the business. Chapter 1 kind of opens up as the main character, Jack, is on a physical penetration test while her husband is at home communicating to her through an earpiece. She does describe on page 4, really super early into the book, that she's just kind of describing the tools that she has brought with her on this physical pen test. And the first thing that made my eyebrows raise was her describing that her backpack was full of housebreaking tools and computer equipment loaded with some deeply shady software Gabe had downloaded from the dark web. Now, if you are a pen tester, I can't imagine like a quicker way to get sued. You do not want to do this. I was kind of surprised that this was in the books, mainly because Jack, her husband, is described to be like a very talented hacker, a very talented coder. So it was an interesting decision to say that he downloaded software off the dark web and that they are using this on clients, because he could just, it's fiction. He could code whatever he wants, you know what I mean? So I was like, this isn't great, especially because it's not very highly revered that a hacker would rip someone else's code. This is, you have a nickname for that in the hacking community, and it's called skid. That was an interesting choice to me that was there, because you don't want to use this software. You don't know what it does. If you do reverse engineer it, that's great, but it's a bad idea, right? Typically, the software is made to be malicious. It's made to either do like ransomware or, C2, exfiltration, botnets. It's a bad idea. Don't do that. Pen testers do use a bunch of tools that they find on GitHub. Typically, it's not like malware though, and it is open source. They can review the code. So yeah, in real life, that would be a huge, no, don't do that. So Jack is on this physical penetration test. She ends up getting caught and arrested because the police didn't buy her story, and her point of contact, the client, did not pick up the phone when the police called. This, I would say, is very possible, and this has happened before. I would say the most notable case is probably the two gentlemen in Iowa who were pen testing a courthouse, and the sheriff disagreed with the state kind of assuming that they had jurisdiction over this courthouse. These two pen testers were arrested and they were charged with felonies. The charges were later dropped, but that is still a pretty traumatic event. And arrests are on your record, right? Whether you are proved guilty or innocent, that is there. So that is something that could have the potential to follow you around and impact your life. So yes, you can get arrested for being on pen test, even if you do have all the proper permissions. Jack, when she comes home, she gets released from the prison, or not prison, I guess it would just be kind of like a jail. She sees her husband dead when she arrives home, okay? So that's where all of this stuff kind of really kicks off, because she quickly realizes that she is the main suspect in this case, and she essentially goes on the run. Now, I would like to say that it is funny because Gabe, the main character, or her husband, basically has pretty large Twitter following on InfoSec Twitter, about 100,000 followers. But it seems that Jack does not actually really have many people that she can reach out to and ask questions to or ask for help. She seems to be mainly focused on social engineering and the, physical penetration testing side, while her husband Gabe is the more technical hands-on keyboard side. But she only knows Gabe and then also Gabe's one friend who is just like a coder at some like kind of like a Life 365-esque company. And she talks to her husband's friend and gets information from him. One of the pieces of information that she gets is she gets the advice to use the Signal messaging app. Signal messaging app is kind of like WhatsApp, but it is more focused on security and privacy. The problem with the way that Signal was depicted in the book, though, was that Jack seems to think that Signal masks her location, and that is not at all how that works. Signal will encrypt your messages and phone calls from end to end while in transit, and they don't store that information. So if the police were to subpoena the phone company or Signal for your messages and exchanges, they would not be able to provide that information. The police would not have that information. However, Signal works on the internet, right? And so your cell phone provider assigns an IP address to your phone. In the case of the book, she's using a phone, but she's also using a burner number with Signal, communicating with somebody who does eventually turn out to be working with the police, right? So in that case, what the police would do to get her location would essentially be subpoena the burner phone number company and say what IP address is associated with this phone number. Then the police would take that IP address and subpoena the phone company and say, I need to know the location or, all the information about this specific IP. Who do you have this assigned to? What towers are they connected to? Because your phone is going to be sending data, Signal data, through the internet, through using an IP address that's been assigned to you, and you are going to be connecting to nearby towers, right? So I'm 99% sure that the phone company would have that information as to what IP address is connected to what phone number, which account, and what towers that they are connecting to. And that will give you a kind of like general location. She mentions calling someone, like calling her sister, and she's like, yeah, I'm using Signal, so the police can't triangulate my signal. No, that's not how that works. So I don't want people to go download Signal and think that this app will mask your location. It does not work like that. Another part of the book, she uses her skills to break into an insurance company because she realizes that an insurance policy was taken out on her husband a few days before he died, and she basically wanted to find out about the person that took out this policy so that it would give her more information of who might be involved with his murder. She breaks into this insurance company and poses as an IT employee, goes to the agent's desk, the agent that had worked on that policy, and then that agent wasn't there. So she social engineers that agent by calling her and pretending to be IT, getting her password, going through her computer, and pulling up all of the information related to a policy, including a phone call, a recorded call for the person who had set that up. That was a cool part of the book. I think one of my problems is while all this is happening, she had sustained a wound fairly early on in the book from jumping a fence. So at this point, she is suffering from this wound. It keeps bleeding. It's definitely getting infected. And she says that she can't go to get medical attention or seek medical help for this because she's in the UK. They have socialized medicine. She doesn't want to tip off the police. But in my head, I'm thinking, you just broke into this insurance company and were able to get all this information, but you can't find antibiotics or a way to get medical care. So that part was a little hard for me to believe because I think that would have honestly been a really cool subplot of her trying to seek this medical information or, medical help, antibiotics, whatever. But that's kind of one of the smaller points. As she gathers more evidence, she realizes that she needs to access her husband's backups and files. She can't go back home because 1, she's on the run from the police, 2, that's a crime scene. So she tries to log in to his account to get these backups. The problem is she does have the password, but it is protected by multi-factor authentication, and it was set up to send a kind of a code to her husband's phone. Her husband's phone is in evidence. The police have that phone. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, cool. We are setting up the plot to do SIM swapping. And if you aren't familiar with SIM swapping, basically what that is let's say a malicious person got access to your Coinbase account, like your password and email, and they want to break into your Coinbase account, but you have multi-factor authentication turned on, and Coinbase will send you a text message with a code. Well, what these people do they'll call your phone company and they will social engineer them into switching your phone number onto a phone that they have, so that when they send that code, they will get that code. And it is a way to bypass that kind of multi-factor authentication step. Now, that is a real problem and a real exploit that does happen. This is not the route that she goes down initially, because I was thinking she is the wife. She's probably on her phone, that phone number's account, right? Her husband's account. So she could probably just call them and say, hey, my husband broke his phone. I'm just trying to get it set up on a new phone. And, can you switch this over? She is like the social engineering queen, right? This is not what she does. Instead, she decides to reach out to her cop ex-boyfriend, which honestly was a horrible idea because 1, he is a cop, 2, he does not like you. And for another reason, a more technical reason, because she calls him, he does agree to break into like the evidence room, get access to this code. And then he says that he will write it down on a piece of paper and then go to London to meet her somewhere in a public location. Obviously this ends up being a setup, but one of the technical issues is that those codes that you get are usually only good for like 15 minutes, right? These are not codes that last forever. These codes do expire, they are reused. I cannot imagine that he would be able to get that code in time, drive all the way to London, or take, whatever type of transportation to London and then give her the code and it won't be expired. So that audio was like screaming in my head, like, don't, like this, why are you doing this? Like, don't do that. That's not how that works. But ultimately she does go through with this plan, but instead of her meeting her ex-boyfriend in public, she sends her sister. Her sister gets arrested because it ended up being a setup. So what she does next is she goes on the dark web and she finds someone who agrees to do the SIM swap for her. They meet in person, right? And at this point, she does not have funds, but she does have access to her husband's Bitcoin, which at the time was about $20,000 worth of Bitcoin. Meeting someone in real life on the dark web, I don't think that really happens. I think that would be a horrible idea to do that. And especially with something like SIM swapping, where you don't need to meet this person physically, especially because she's sending him this money over Bitcoin, which she's worried about, like the police monitoring her bank accounts, but don't realize that Bitcoin transactions are also public and publicly logged on a ledger. She gets there, he does the swap. It cost $20,000. Since she had made the deal, though, the Bitcoin had lost value, and the Bitcoin that she had was only valued at $17,000. So that was an issue, and she ended up having to give the guy her wedding ring to make up the difference, but she does get the phone with her husband's phone number and is able to get the code. On a smaller note, I don't know what the going rate for SIM swapping is, but I think that $20,000 would be extremely high. But again, a fiction book. She does get the phone and she is able to break into his backup account, go through the files and get the evidence that she needs to basically clear her name. Those are not all of the technical components in the book. These are just ones that I saw kind of more like glaring issues with. And yeah, I hope that you find this video interesting. I would love to do this some more. So if you have book recommendations that talk about hacking or just kind of anything like technical in an interesting way, let me know. I would love to read those and do some more videos like this. It is very cool to see pen testing kind of depicted in more popular culture in a way that, the average person who maybe does not work in the field can kind of see. And yeah, overall, like I said, I think it was kind of in the middle with accuracy, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. I will be doing more of these in the future, and make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks everyone. Bye.